Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Cavaliers Weekly on the Bleacher Report app. I am Mikey McNuggets, Mike Lucas from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And what a time it is to be a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs beat the Miami Heat last night, improved to 52-10 on the season, and are within arm's reach of becoming just the third team in the history of the NBA to win 70 games in the regular season. The Cavs are in the middle of a 12-game win streak. It's their third 12-game or longer win streak of the season. They're just the second team ever in the history of the NBA to have three separate win streaks of 12 or more games in the single season, joining the 2006-2007 Dallas Mavericks. 52-10 ties the eighth best start ever seen by an NBA team. It's the best season in franchise history through 62 games, when the Cavs won 66 games back in 2008 with LeBron. They started the season 51-11. So this team, one game better than that. And they've come back from fourth quarter deficits in each of the last four wins. It is an incredible time to be a Cavs fan, but can they reach 70 wins? They are 52-10 with 20 games to play. That means they have to go 18-2 over the final 20 games to reach 70 wins. The only teams in the history of the association to win 70 or more regular season games were the Golden State Warriors back in 15-16, who won 73 games that season, but lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA championship. And then back in 95-96, Michael Jordan led the Chicago Bulls to 72 wins, a 72-10 record. They ended up winning the NBA championship that season. There have been some other teams that have gotten close. The Lakers in 71-72 won 69 games. The Bulls, 1 year after winning 72 games, won 69. Those are the only two teams that ever won 69 games in a season. The Sixers in the late 60s, the Celtics in the early 70s, they won 68 games. The 85-86 Celtics and the 91-92 Chicago Bulls and the 2000 Los Angeles Lakers all won 67 games. So did the Mavericks, so did the Warriors, and so did the Spurs in 15-16. The Warriors also did it again, and then you see a major drop-off. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams in the history of the NBA have ever won at least 67 games. And the Cavaliers, well, they're on pace right now for 69. So the question is, can they get to that elusive 70? And should they push it to make history? Well, let's start off with the schedule, because the Cavs have 20 games remaining. And although they have a lot of games left and not a lot of days of rest during that stretch, it's not a gauntlet by any means. Let's look at the next handful of games here for the Cavs. They take on the Hornets in Charlotte on Friday. Then they go to Milwaukee to take on the Bucks on Sunday night. That's a nationally televised ESPN game. They're home against Brooklyn. Then they head to Memphis, tough matchup. They come back home on Sunday to take on the Orlando Magic, a team they just beat by 40 the last time they played. And then they head off on a 5-game road trip. The Clippers, the Kings, the Suns, the Jazz, and the Blazers in 5 consecutive road games. Then they have San Antonio without Wemby, at Detroit, back home, LA, and the Knicks. And they hit the road to play San Antonio before finishing the season with Sacramento and Chicago at home, Indiana and the Knicks on the road, and then Indiana again on the last Sunday of the regular season to close out the entire year. So 20 games left, but as of right now, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, only 11 of them come against teams that are currently even in the play-in standings. And I hope my math is right as I did that very fast. But you have games against teams that are nowhere near the playoffs and have no real incentive to win, like San Antonio, Utah, the Nets, Charlotte. The Blazers are in that weird situation. Phoenix at that point could be out of it. So they have some games that don't really matter. So now the question is, should they push it? How hard should the Cavaliers go to reach 70 wins? Is it worth pushing guys to the maximum without giving them rest to potentially sacrifice their health for the playoffs? And my answer to that is simple. No regular season accomplishment is more important than being healthy for the playoffs. So the answer to that is flat out, unquestionably, no. But the beauty of this Cavaliers team this season is they are so deep and they have so many guys that are contributing at such a high level that Kenny Atkinson hasn't had to overexert any of his key contributors this season to get to 52-10. The Cavs don't have a player averaging more than 32 and a half minutes per game this season. I'm going to say that again. The Cavaliers don't have a player on their roster averaging more than 32 and a half minutes per game. I checked this yesterday. Let me check it again just to confirm. But their most played player in the league this season ranks outside the top 40. Let me say it one more time. Outside the top 40. That is where their highest played player ranks this season. And that is how you sustain minutes, wear and tear on your stars. All the good things you want for the playoffs, you maintain it by not overexerting them in the regular season. Guys like Ty Jerome, Dean Wade, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter since coming to Cleveland, Javonte Green in his few minutes here and there, Isaac Okoro, Craig Porter Jr. Basically, everyone Kenny Atkinson has put on the court this season has played at a level that is above where you would expect, if not at minimum meeting your expectation. And that's allowed Darius and Donovan and Jarrett and Evan to take rest days throughout the year, recover, and not have to push it too hard. And that's why I think, despite the fact the Cavs won't push it to get to 70 wins, there is a pretty darn good shot that they will reach the 70-win plateau. I'd put it at 40%. 40% that they go 18-2 over the final 20 games of the season to reach that 70% mark. Part of the reason I think they'll be a little more cautious down the stretch is they already have the one seed in the Eastern Conference basically wrapped up. According to ESPN's analytics, the Cavs have a 99.8% chance of securing the number one seed and home court advantage in the Eastern Conference playoffs. They are currently 8 games ahead of the Boston Celtics with 20 games to go. The Cavs have only lost 10 games all season. I have an incredibly hard time believing they're going to lose 4, 5, 6 more games in this final 20-game stretch. It could happen. They're not unbeatable. We've seen in the last couple of games, they got off to slow starts. Miami gave them trouble until the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. So they certainly could lose 1 or 2 here or there. But I'm not too panicked, and I don't see any scenario where the level that everyone's playing at will lead to more than just a few, a couple, a handful, less than 5 losses from here to there. So despite having the 1 seed locked up, the race for the number 1 record in basketball is far from over. The Cavs are 52-10 and have a 1-game lead over Oklahoma City for the best record in basketball. And you may be asking, well, why does that matter? OKC's in the Western Conference. Well, if you didn't know, home court advantage in the NBA Finals now is awarded to the team with the better record. So having the best record in basketball gives you a Game 7 at home in the NBA Finals, even if you're the 1 seed and the team you're playing is a 1 seed. The tiebreaker then comes down to who has the best record. And the Cavs, I do think, although what Kenny Atkinson said, that's not our main goal. We obviously know it's important, but we're not going to sacrifice anything for that. It's something to keep in the back of your head as you're looking for reasons to get up for the final 20 games of the season. The Cavs have already clinched a playoff berth, the first team in the league to officially secure a top 6 seed in the playoffs, lock in their spot. So what do you have to play for next? Locking up the 1 seed in the East and locking up home court advantage in the NBA Finals. I think the Cavs can get to 70 wins without having to push Donovan and Darius and Evan to the max. They have DeAndre now. They have Ty Jerome. Dean Wade's healthy. Sam Merrill's playing well. Max Strus is finding his jump shot over the last 6 games. He's shooting better than 40% from the three-point line, which is crucial to Max Strus's effectiveness come playoff time. The Cavs team is rolling. They're playing better than any team in basketball. Their 12-game win streak, despite being in a proverbial slump for their standards, speaks for themselves. And they have Charlotte coming up on Friday, a team that they have destroyed basically every time they've played this season. The first game was close. They ended up throwing up that Max Strus zone in the fourth quarter, and that shut down Charlotte's offense, and they pulled out the win. I fully expect this win streak to reach 13 games come Friday night. Let's talk about another facet that is interesting about the Cleveland Cavaliers right now, and that is the change in the closing lineup we've seen Kenny Atkinson go to over the last 3 games. Against Boston, against Portland, And then last night against the Miami Heat, Kenny Atkinson decided to close games with DeAndre Hunter at the 4, Evan Mobley at the 5, and Jared Allen on the bench. I think there's a couple reasons to that, and I'm not willing to make any sweeping judgment or final conclusion based on 3 regular season games, but I do think it's interesting that given the option, Kenny has kind of already shown his cards and said, DeAndre, we like what you bring offensively without having to sacrifice too much defensively, that we are going to put one of the members of the core 4, a guy who signed a $90 million contract extension this summer, on the bench in the closing minutes of the game. And so far, the results have been fantastic. So there's no argument. There's no basketball argument to make right now to why Jared Allen should be on the court either alongside both of those guys or on the court instead of DeAndre Hunter. The numbers speak for themselves. For as good as the Cavs' offense has been this season, last night against Miami, it was the defense, particularly in the final 4 minutes of the game, that allowed Cleveland to come back and beat Miami. Miami ended up with 107 points last night. They reached the 100-point barrier with 6.5 minutes to play. They finished with 107. The Cavs ended the game with 6 consecutive stops. The defensive tandem of Mobley, Hunter, along with Strus, Garland, and Mitchell last night, in the final 4.5 minutes of the game, had a defensive rating under 65. Spectacular. And offensively, Miami went zone against Cleveland, and with Hunter and Mitchell playing that flasher spot, getting into the middle of the 2-3 zone, they were able to score just enough to hold off the Heat. Impressive win. And with Hunter at the 4 in those closing lineups, the Cavs now have 5 guys they essentially can switch with, shooting at all 5 positions. You could argue how much of a shooter is Evan Mobley at this point. Will teams guard him in the playoffs? That's certainly a debate we can have in 20 games. But the other 4 are unquestioned. You have to guard DeAndre Hunter on the perimeter. You have to guard Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland on the perimeter. You can't leave Max Strus open. He's hit big shots in the 4th quarter against Portland, against the Heat, and he was also critical, dishing out a couple assists in the Cavaliers that the Cavs put on the Chicago Bulls to wrap up that game on, was that Wednesday night? Tuesday night, on Tuesday night. So you can't leave anyone in those lineups, and especially when a team's playing as much zone as Miami did, having that spacing spreads the zone out, gives bigger pockets for Donovan or Evan or DeAndre to get in between the zone, get to that high post. And once the ball gets to the high post, then it's on Miami to make a decision. Do you let that guy go one-on-one, or do you collapse in and force him to kick out for a corner 3 or a wing 3? If Jared Allen's in there instead of DeAndre Hunter, it's one less guy for Miami to have to expand the zone to, and it's one less shooter to kick out to if Jared Allen isn't the guy catching at the high post. So I like the tactical switch made by Kenny Atkinson. I think it makes a lot of sense. Kenny said after the game last night, I'm not sold that is going to be my closing lineup, game in and game out. I think a lot of it's matchup dependent. Against Miami and against Portland, those teams had one big and a bunch of guards. So if you're playing a team with a bunch of guards, you want the ability to switch. And Jared Allen is capable of switching on the perimeter, but you'd rather have DeAndre Hunter in those situations. Boston, similar. They play 4 guards. Cornette was the big. You can live with just one big against them. If they play a team that has 2 bigs, you have the luxury of going with Allen back onto that closing lineup alongside Mobley and even potentially DeAndre Hunter too. But with how well Hunter's playing at the 4 and in a small sample size, we've seen a lot of success on both ends of the court between DeAndre and Evan. I'm not willing to change it up. And I think come playoff time, we're going to see a lot of games where Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter finish the game together while Jared Allen watches from the bench. And kudos to Jared Allen, because even though he's not playing his best basketball right now, I know he had an incredible game against the Bulls, but he struggled last night against Miami. He struggled against Boston. He didn't have his best game against the Blazers either. But he's taken this like a true professional. And at this stage of the season, Jarrett knows all that matters is wins. And we've won 52 games out of 62. And we're on a 12-game win streak. I am not bigger. And when I say I am speaking as Jared Allen, I am not bigger than the collection of this team. And I am not bigger than the greater good for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I've done my fair share. And if I'm not going to play in the final 4 minutes, I'm going to make the other 27 minutes of the game I play the best possible 27 minutes I can give my teammates. And he's a consummate professional. You could not ask for a better guy in the locker room or a more well-rounded veteran to have to be in a position to see those crucial minutes get taken away from him without throwing a fit. So I applaud and give Jared Allen a ton of credit and admiration for how he's handled this situation. And there's going to be a time where the Cavs need Jared Allen to be a monster and close out games and play defense against some of the better centers in basketball, or switch onto a guard when he is on the court and get a crucial stop, or score on an alley-oop or on a post-up situation late in the shot clock. And that's the kind of guy who's always going to be ready whenever his number's called. It reminds me of Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa back at at Alabama, when Hurts got benched for Tua, but came back in the SEC championship and was a crucial cog. Why? Because he stayed ready for his moment. Jared Allen will be ready for his moment when it comes. And that moment will come. It's a matter of when, not if. Last thing I want to touch on real quick, but Max Strus continues to make winning plays. There's a lot of argument about should Strus start, should Hunter start. My 2 cents on that, against the Boston Celtics, DeAndre Hunter has to be in that starting lineup. Against the other 29 teams or 28 teams in basketball, I don't think it matters all that much. I think the closing lineup is much more important than the starting lineup against every team but Boston. And in the last couple of games, we've seen Max Strus make clutch shots against Portland, clutch threes against Miami, and the Cavs have made a conscious effort to get him involved earlier in the offense with Max Strus in the starting lineup. They ran the first play of the game last night for him against Miami. He got an early dose of shots in their last game against Chicago. He also got an early dose of shots against Portland. Didn't make the ones in Portland, but the Cavs are making an effort to get him the rock early. A couple things Strus does better than the other 2 options at the small forward position that I think cement his status as the starting 3 against every team but Boston. When you're playing with both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, there's just not as much spacing as if you were playing with just one real big and another legitimate shooter. So you have to find ways to create space. And of the 3 candidates to start at the 3 main candidates, Strus, Hunter, and Dean Wade, Max Strus does a better job than those 2 at navigating screens and using Jarrett and Evan to get himself open. The Cavs can run part of the playbook for Max Strus that they're not going to run for Dean Wade. And they probably can run it for DeAndre Hunter, but it's not using Hunter to the maximum of his offensive abilities in that role. And when Donovan and Darius and Evan are on the court together, you need a low-usage guy alongside Jared Allen as the 5th starter, because there's only so many plays you can run for a certain group of 5 players in a 4 or 5 minute stretch. They run plays for Strus to get him involved early, because then he does all the little things that help teams win. He makes winning plays. He's willing to pick up guys 94 feet down the court. Donovan Mitchell told us last night in one of the funnier sound bites he's given us all season, I told Max, I want to guard the best player. And Max yells at me and says, no, insert explicitive way, I got him. Max is a crazy, crazy dude on the basketball court and brings an energy and a tenacity and, frankly, a toughness that I think the starting 5 needs in matchups that don't include facing Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And until there's any slump or drop-off in the production of the starting 5 with Strus in the lineup with them, with the core 4, I don't think the Cavs have to make a change. And you can point to the slow starts. That's fine. I don't think that's Max Strus's fault. Yeah, he could have made a shot here or there, but the Cavs turned the ball over against Boston at an alarmingly high rate. They couldn't buy a shot against Portland. Against Chicago, it was a better first quarter, not great. I didn't love the shot selection. It's not for a lack of effort from Max Strus, though. And it's not for a lack of helping the team win in other ways besides scoring, which is what Max Strus ends up bringing to the table. He's a better passer than he gets credit for. He's a better rebounder than he gets credit for. And frankly, he's one of their best cutters without the basketball, and that allows him to fit in seamlessly with the other guys in the starting lineup. I'm not saying DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade can't do those kind of things, but it's more natural to Max. And unless you're playing Boston, I would stick with him in the starting lineup because some of the winning plays he makes just aren't replicable. And it's not using the other guys to the max of their ability. And if you're only going to get 27 to 30 minutes from guys like DeAndre Hunter and 18 to 22 minutes from Dean Wade, I want all of those minutes in a playoff series going to them being able to do the things that they do best on the court. So bottom line, yeah, the Cavs can get to 70 wins. I'm hoping they do. I do not want them to overexert themselves in any capacity to reach that number for the sake of just reaching that number. But that would be an exclusive elite club of basketball. And this team has been playing that well all season. I do think it's possible. I gave it a 40% chance earlier. I'm sticking with that number. They're going to rest guys down the stretch. But because of the depth of this team and because of how many guys playing at a high caliber right now they have, I think they could win and beat quality opponents even without their best guys. DeAndre Hunter in the closing lineup over Jared Allen, I think it's here to stay. I think we're going to see instances where Kenny closes with both bigs. But for the most part, I think their best lineup right now, their most effective way to close the game, includes Jared Allen on the bench, Evan Mobley at the 5, DeAndre Hunter at the 4, and then either Max Strus or Dean Wade at the 3. And speaking of Strus, the dude makes winning plays. He's a winning basketball player, and he brings a toughness and unpredictability to the starting lineup that I don't think anyone else on the roster brings. I appreciate everyone for tuning into this week's Cavaliers Weekly on the Bleacher Report app. If you liked what you heard, if you liked what you saw, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Lucas TV. There it is on the screen. If I can click the right button, at Mike Lucas TV. They call me McNuggets on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and we are live Monday through Friday on YouTube. Just search the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and you can hear more of this, more Brown Steaks, Guardians, Cavs, all there, 2 hours a day, live each morning. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll see you next time for this Cavaliers Weekly Update. 52-10. Let's keep it rolling. Go Cavs. Peace.